The wind rolled cold across Capitol Park that morning, clean air, sharp edges, joggers passed under pale trees, dogs barked in rhythm, and somewhere near the lake, a woman in navy blue Lululemon slowed to stretch. Her name was Maya Brooks, 40, poised, the quiet type who made silence feel like authority. To everyone else, she was just another runner. Then the shout split the calm. Hands where I can see. People stopped. Heads turned. 2 police officers advanced, one hand on his holster, the other gripping the air like ownership. Maya blinked once, confusion flickering across her face. "Is there a problem, officer?" "You match a description," he barked. "Stay still." Before she could speak again, his fist seized the front of her shirt and yanked hard. Fabric stretched, snapped, and the world froze. A woman gasped. A man pulled out his phone. Even the dogs went silent. The officer's voice thundered again. "You think you can just run through this park like you own the place?" Maya's breathing steadied. Her gaze rose, unbroken. "No," she said quietly. "I built this place." The line cut through the morning like glass underfoot. He didn't hear it, or maybe he didn't believe it. His partner shifted uneasily. "Sergeant, maybe we should—" "Quiet." The first snapped. "She's resisting." A second tug ripped the neckline wider. The cold hit her skin. Still, Maya didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't plead. Voiceover fades in, low and steady. They say power speaks loud, but sometimes, the loudest thing in the world is silence. Around them, the crowd grew, mothers with strollers, teenagers holding up phones, a man jogging closer, whispering, "Wait, isn't that?" Maya's eyes locked on the officer's badge. Her tone didn't rise. It dropped to the kind of calm that makes people nervous. "Do you know whose budget pays for your department?" she asked. He hesitated. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said, "you should be more careful who you touch." The camera pans in on the tear in her shirt logo, warped, dignity exposed but unbroken. The officer scoffed. "Lady, don't play smart." "I'm not," she said softly. "I'm playing fair." The partner's radio crackled. "Unit 24? Status check?" He didn't answer. His hand was still fisted in her fabric, knuckles white, breathing heavy. She glanced down at his grip, then back up, unshaken. Her voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut steel. "Let go, while it's still your choice." The crowd murmured. A few steps back, a young park employee, barely 20, lifted his phone halfway, hesitated, then said aloud, "Wait, I know her." The officer turned, irritated. "What?" "She's not some suspect," the kid stammered. "She's Maya Brooks, the CEO who rebuilt this park after the floods." A pause spread like wildfire. The officer's jaw clenched. His grip loosened, but only slightly. "I don't care who she." And that's when Maya spoke the line that would echo across every screen that night. "Why? I run this state." For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Only the wind, tugging at the torn edge of her shirt, whispering proof that the tables had already begun to turn. The lake rippled like glass behind her, but Maya Brooks didn't turn. The officer's hand still hovered near his belt, unsure now. The crowd's silence had turned into something else: attention. Eyes widened, phones raised higher, the air thick with that fragile moment when everyone realizes they might be witnessing history. Maya simply adjusted her torn sleeve and exhaled. No trembling, no shouting. Only that stillness, the kind of stillness that unnerves those who live off control. They thought she was another stranger. What they didn't know was that the stranger had already written the rules they were breaking. She lowered her hands slowly, not in surrender but in command. Her smartwatch lit up, a single vibration. The discreet tone only one person in the state government recognized, Protocol 7 activated. But no one around her knew that. To them, she was just a woman who refused to bow. To her, this was documentation, evidence. The young park employee who'd recognized her whispered again, "She funds the state infrastructure board. My mom works under her foundation." The officer scoffed, sweat rolling down his temple. "You people always think name-dropping changes something." Maya's gaze didn't move from him. Names don't change things, actions do. Her voice landed like a verdict. Even the second officer, nervous now, shifted his stance, lowering his radio halfway. A jogger nearby muttered to his friend, "That's her. Brooks Infrastructure, the one behind the highway rebuilds." The friend whispered back, "If that's true, he's done." But Maya didn't respond to any of it. She took one step back, standing tall, the torn shirt hanging like a banner of quiet defiance. Her mind flickered briefly back to boardrooms where she was the only woman in the room, the only black voice at the table. She'd learned early, silence can be sharper than noise if you know when to use it. She'd fought wars in polished rooms, with contracts instead of guns, and she'd won by staying calm when others shouted. But this was different. This was public, raw, unfiltered. "Ma'am," the younger officer spoke finally, voice smaller now. "We might have made a mistake." Maya turned to him not with triumph, but with a kind of sorrow. "Not might," she said quietly. "You did." He looked down, shame creeping into his stance. The sergeant bristled, unwilling to lose face. "Lady, you can explain that downtown." Maya tilted her head slightly, calm as a closing door. "You really want to double down on that sentence?" Her phone buzzed again. The lock screen flashed an encrypted message from her assistant. "Governor notified. Press inquiries already incoming." In the background, a woman's voice carried, "Are you recording this?" "Yes," another replied. "The whole thing." She hasn't even raised her voice. Maya inhaled slowly. "You don't see the irony, do you?" she said, looking straight at the officer still clutching authority like a weapon. "You demand my hands where you can see them. But it's your hands the world is watching now." For a moment, he froze. No comeback, no order, just the sound of the lake, and the faint click of dozens of phones capturing every second. When power meets grace, something always cracks. And once it cracks, truth gets in. Maya glanced down at the badge once more, reading the name aloud, clear enough for every camera to hear. "Sergeant Fallon, you'll want to remember this day. So will your captain." He stepped back half an inch. His partner looked at her, realizing too late that this wasn't resistance, it was accountability. Then Maya turned her head toward the lake again, the morning sun finally cutting through gray clouds and touching her face. She closed her eyes briefly, almost in prayer. When she opened them, her voice was calm, measured, and absolute. "This conversation is over." She reached up, tapping her earpiece once. Her assistant's voice came through, clear and steady. "Miss Brooks, confirmation received. The state line is listening." And with that, the camera zoomed out, officers frozen, the crowd holding breath. And the woman they thought they could control stood unmoved. The quiet center of a storm she hadn't started but would finish. The air felt heavier now. A circle had formed, spectators pressing closer, phones up, whispers colliding with tension. Maya stood still in the center, her torn sleeve fluttering in the wind like a flag no one expected to see raised. Sergeant Fallon broke the silence first. "Everyone back up. This area's under investigation." His voice carried authority, but not confidence. The second officer, Reed, shifted beside him, eyes darting between the cameras and his superior. "Investigation of what?" someone from the crowd asked. Fallon's jaw tightened. "Suspicious activity. Possible resistance." Maya's brow lifted. "Resistance?" She took one slow step forward, her tone even. "Running in a park you people patrol? Or being in a space my company rebuilt after your department's budget cuts?" Fallon blinked. "Watch your tone." "My tone?" Her voice didn't rise, yet every word cut through the morning like a clean blade. "You ripped my shirt open in front of civilians. You don't get to talk about tone." The murmurs grew louder. Reed tried to whisper something to his sergeant, but Fallon snapped. "Handle your perimeter." Reed hesitated. "Sir, we're losing control of the scene." Fallon ignored him, gesturing to Maya. "Ma'am, we can resolve this quietly if you comply." "I've complied since you shouted the first word," she replied. "And yet here we are." "And 17, a man filming near the fountain called out, 'She didn't do anything. We've got it all on video.'" Fallon turned, shouting, "Put the phones down. This is police business." The man didn't move. Neither did anyone else. It was the first time Fallon realized he'd lost the crowd. The park employee, the same young man who'd recognized her earlier, stepped forward again. "Sergeant, listen to me," he said, his voice shaking but brave. "That woman funds the state housing project. She's not a threat." "Today, Fallon wheeled around, fury rising to mask his fear. "You want to be arrested too?" The kid swallowed but didn't move back. "You can't arrest the truth." That sentence landed hard. Even the partner officer looked away. Maya watched all of it, still unflinching. She'd seen this energy before, men in suits instead of uniforms, loud in meetings, small in morals. Fallon turned back to her. "You think this changes anything? Titles don't put you above the law." "I agree," she said calmly. "Which is why you should be worried." For a long beat, nothing moved. Only the wind stirred the lake's surface. Then Fallon took out his radio. "Dispatch. Requesting confirmation of suspect ID." Her smartwatch vibrated again. Message displayed. "Press brief prepped. Governor's office notified." She almost smiled, just barely. "Dispatch," Fallon repeated, impatient. A faint reply crackled through his radio. "Sergeant Fallon, do not engage further with the subject." "Repeat. Stand down immediately." He froze. "Say again?" The voice repeated, louder this time. "Subject verified. State security has been alerted. Cease contact until further instruction." Everyone heard it. Every phone caught it. Fallon's face drained of color. Reed took a small step back, murmuring, "What the hell's going on?" Maya looked him dead in the eye. "You're finding out," Ivory said. She bent down slowly, picked up her fallen phone, brushed the dirt from its cracked screen, and said softly, "You should have checked the name before you grabbed the person." Her tone was almost kind, but it carried the weight of an empire. Fallon stammered, "Who exactly are you?" Maya met his eyes. "You'll read it in your suspension report." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reed lowered his radio completely, whispering, "Oh my God." "Insos." The young park employee turned to the onlookers and said, "I told you. She owns half the city." Fallon's hand dropped from his belt. His authority slipped through his fingers faster than the wind over the lake. And still, Maya didn't move, didn't celebrate, didn't smile. She just looked around at the gathering of strangers and said quietly, "Now you see how fast respect disappears when you don't look like power." The crowd stayed silent. Fallon took a shaky step backward, sweat glinting on his forehead. Somewhere, a siren wailed in the distance, growing louder, heading straight for them. Maya glanced at the sound, her eyes calm again. "Good," she said under her breath. "Let them come. It's time they learn who they really work for." The sirens drew closer, blue lights flickering through the trees, scattering across the lake like broken glass. Fallon stiffened, trying to reclaim control that had already slipped away. "Everyone step back," he barked, voice cracking with nerves. No one moved. Maya stood exactly where she had from the start, unarmed, unbothered, unshaken. Her phone buzzed once. A message flashed across the screen. "Governor's team arriving in 4 minutes. Hold position." And she locked it and slipped it into her pocket. Fallon turned to Reed. "Get her cuffed before they show up." Reed hesitated. "Sir," dispatch said to stand down. "Do it," Fallon shouted, eyes wild. The young park employee, the one who had spoken earlier, stepped forward again, his hands trembling but firm. "Don't," he said loudly. Every camera turned toward him. "She's Maya Brooks, CEO of Brooks Infrastructure. You touch her again, you're done." Fallon glared at him. "Kid, you have no idea what you're talking about." But the kid didn't back down. "I know exactly who I'm talking about. My father works for her company. She rebuilt the East levees after the floods. You're standing on her donation right now." The crowd erupted, voices overlapping, disbelief turning to outrage. A woman near the front gasped, "Oh my God, that's her? The governor's wife?" Someone else answered, "Yes, she funds half the state's community projects." Phones lifted higher. Faces changed from curiosity to guilt. Maya's expression didn't shift. She simply said, "You don't need to defend me, son." He shook his head. "Yes, I do. Because this happens too often, and no one ever says anything." His voice cracked, raw and human. My mom got pulled over last year for driving too new a car. She cried the whole way home. I didn't say anything then, but I'm saying it now. The statement hit harder than any headline. Fallon's mouth opened, but the words never came. Reed stepped slightly forward, uncertain which side of history he was standing on. Maya turned to the crowd. "What's your name?" "Eli," the kid said. "Eli," she repeated softly. "You just did more for this state than most of its lawmakers." He blinked fast, not sure whether to smile or cry. Fallon cut in sharply, desperate to reassert authority. This doesn't change the fact that she resisted arrest. Maya faced him fully now. "You ripped my shirt open and called it procedure. You broke the law, not me." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind stopped moving. 2 new police vehicles pulled up by the curb. From the first stepped a woman in a dark suit, earpiece glinting, a member of the governor's protective team. "Sergeant Fallon?" she asked coldly. He straightened, trying to salvage his posture. "Yes, ma'am." "You're relieved of command effective immediately. Hand over your weapon." Gasps surged through the crowd again. Fallon froze. "What? On whose order?" The woman didn't blink. On the governor's and on hers. All eyes swung to Maya. She said nothing, just nodded once, calm and deliberate. Reed unbuckled his own belt slowly, placing his weapon on the hood of the patrol car. "Ma'am," he said quietly to Maya, "I'm sorry, we didn't know." She looked at him, not angry, not merciful, just steady. That's exactly the problem. Eli stood to the side, watching the officers being escorted away. He whispered, almost to himself, "You didn't even have to yell." Maya glanced at him. "I've learned that when the truth is loud enough, you don't need to be." Fallon protested as they led him toward the car. "You set me up," Maya answered. "No, you exposed yourself." The officers disappeared into the blue haze. Eli wiped at his eyes. Maya turned toward the remaining crowd, the sun glinting against the torn fabric of her shirt. "This isn't about one mistake," she said softly. "It's about what people do when they think no one important is watching." She met Eli's gaze again. "But someone always is." A collective hush swept the park as more black SUVs rolled in along the path. Uniformed agents stepped out, crisp and silent. They didn't need an introduction, everyone knew what that meant. Eli whispered, awed, "The governor's here." Maya's eyes lifted toward the road. "Then let's finish this properly." 80. The sound of gravel crunching under boots echoed through the park as state security spread out, forming a silent perimeter. Fallon sat handcuffed in the back of a patrol car now, his voice muffled, ranting about protocol. But Maya barely looked at him. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, the shimmer of sunlight across the lake, calm against the storm she refused to mirror. Then another officer, one who had just arrived, stepped forward, tall, broad, young. He hadn't seen what happened. He only saw a black woman standing in the middle of his scene. "Ma'am," he barked, hand on her arm. "I need you to step aside." The crowd gasped. A flashbulb from someone's phone caught the exact moment his hand gripped her shoulder. The sound, soft but sharp, was louder than his voice. Maya's body went still, the kind of stillness that hums right before thunder. She turned her head, slow and deliberate. "You just made the same mistake your colleague did," she said quietly. The young officer blinked. "I'm just doing my job." "No," she replied, voice low but steady. "You're repeating history." Her breathing changed, controlled, measured. In that instant, the world around her blurred, the voices, the phones, the sirens fading into the background of her memory. She was 16 again. Charlotte, North Carolina. Sunday morning. She had dressed in her best white blouse, pressed skirt to wait for her parents in a hotel lobby. But a clerk had approached, smile tight, words rehearsed. "This area is for guests only," she had tried to explain. They hadn't listened. They escorted her out to the sidewalk like an inconvenience. She had stood there, heart pounding. Too young to understand it wasn't shame, she felt it was rage, waiting for shape. Now, decades later, that same rage whispered back through her veins, but it didn't roar, it refined. She exhaled slowly, returning to the present. The officer's grip lingered, uncertain now. You think control comes from how hard you hold, she said softly. But real power is how calm you stay when you let go. He hesitated, then released her arm. The collective exhale from the crowd came like a wave. Maya adjusted her sleeve, eyes still locked on him. Step back, officer, one of the governor's security agents commanded sharply. He obeyed instantly. Her smartwatch buzzed once more. The message glowed. Media en route. Governor's ETA, 2 minutes. She closed the alert with a single tap. A woman in the crowd shouted, "They touched her again. Are you seeing this?" Phones lifted higher. Fallon slammed his fist against the patrol window. "Turn those off." No one listened. Maya turned toward the young officer who had just backed away. "What's your name?" He swallowed hard. "Sanders." "Another. Sanders," she repeated, voice still soft. "I hope you remember this moment when you meet someone who looks like me and doesn't have a camera watching." He couldn't speak. She nodded once, almost kindly. Then she turned toward the black SUV now pulling up near the path. The crowd parted instinctively. Governor Alan Brooks stepped out tall, composed, face carved from equal parts anger and disbelief. He moved straight toward her, removing his jacket without a word and placing it over her torn shirt. His hand brushed her shoulder, gentle, protective, proud. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine," she said. But they're not. Behind them, every camera captured the moment. The governor's wife, the CEO, the calm at the center of chaos, standing in silence, while officers who had mocked her minutes ago were now the ones trembling. The governor looked at Fallon through the glass of the patrol car. "Who authorized this?" Fallon didn't answer. Maya did. Arrogance did. The words hung heavy in the morning air, heavier than sirens, heavier than shame. She turned back to the crowd. "Everyone here," she said evenly. "Keep your videos. The truth shouldn't depend on who tells it first." A wave of applause rippled through the park, not loud, not celebratory, but solid. The kind that sounds like justice finding its footing. Maya glanced at her husband, then at the cameras. Her eyes, calm and unbroken, reflected the blue lights still flashing around her. "This isn't over," she said. "It's just been recorded." And as the wind lifted her hair, sunlight struck the badge still lying on the ground near her feet, the symbol of authority undone by a woman who never had to raise her voice. The blue lights finally stopped flashing. They pulsed steady now, like a heartbeat calming down. Governor Brooks spoke quietly with the state security chief, his face dark with restrained fury. Maya stood a few steps away, hands clasped, gaze level, composure intact. Her torn shirt still showed the mark of what had been done, but she didn't hide it. It had become evidence. She lifted her wrist slightly and tapped the corner of her smartwatch. A green light blinked once. Protocol 7. Active. Somewhere across town, a secure command feed went live. Within seconds, her assistant's voice came softly through the earpiece. "Miss Brooks, media outlets are lined up outside the park gates. Legal is listening in. Would you like me to begin formal escalation?" "Yes," Maya said quietly. "Start the internal ethics log. Forward the footage to the oversight board. Tag the department's funding chain." "Understood." She turned to face the crowd. "You can lower your phones," she told them. "They've already been synced to the cloud." Experienced. A ripple of surprise moved through the bystanders. Eli whispered. She was ready for this. The young officer Sanders stood frozen by the fountain, unsure whether to salute or apologize. Maya walked past him, voice steady but cutting. "Officer Sanders, what happens when the people you protect stop trusting you?" He didn't answer. She didn't need one. Fallon, still inside the patrol car, pounded the glass again. "You can't do this. I'll have your husband investigated." "I won." The governor turned to him slowly. "You've already been recorded threatening the governor's wife," he said evenly. "That'll do the investigating for us." Fallon's face drained. He sat back, silent now. Maya's phone buzzed again. "Miss Brooks," her assistant said. "State media is broadcasting live from the park entrance. They want a statement." "Not yet," she replied. "Not while the system still thinks it can lie to our faces." She looked at the lead security agent. How long until the internal review unit arrives? 5 minutes, ma'am. Then 5 minutes is all they'll need. She stepped toward the patrol car, stopping just short of Fallon's window. You said you were doing your job, she said softly. But your job isn't to decide who belongs. It's to protect them, all the same. He didn't look at her. Look at me, she said, quieter but sharper. He lifted his eyes. You'll spend the next few years learning that power without integrity isn't law, it's noise. The agent behind her cleared his throat. Ma'am, we should escort you out. She shook her head. Not until it's logged. Her assistant's voice returned. Ma'am, Protocol 7 complete. All live devices within 50 feet have uploaded their footage to the ethics cloud. Governor's communications team requests your authorization to speak. Denied, Maya said. I'll speak for myself. End quote. She turned back toward the crowd, hundreds of faces, some ashamed, some awed, staring at her as though she had stepped out of myth instead of reality. This morning, she said clearly, I was treated like a suspect in a park my company restored. I didn't shout. I didn't resist. I simply stood still. And the world watched what happens when silence meets arrogance. The crowd erupted, not chaotic, but unified. A wave of clapping, some tears, some fists lifted high. Her husband stepped closer, resting a hand on her back, his voice low. The board's waiting. Good, she said. Then they'll hear this next part. She raised her wrist again, holding the smartwatch toward the nearest camera drone now hovering overhead. Carla, she said to her assistant, voice firm but measured. Initiate audit protocol on the Capitol Police Department. Freeze departmental budgets until review. Confirmed, came the answer. Effective immediately. Eat. The moment the command transmitted, Fallon's radio crackled. Every officer's device in the park went silent. No connection. No access. Maya's gaze didn't move as she spoke the words that would headline every broadcast that night. You called me a threat in the city I helped rebuild. Now you'll learn what real accountability looks like. She turned away, calm as glass under sunlight. Behind her, the officers stood speechless. And in that stillness, every camera in the park caught the same image. The woman who never raised her voice, yet made the entire system go quiet. The wind shifted again, soft, steady, as if the park itself was waiting. The governor's motorcade had quieted. Agents held their distance. Cameras from news crews now lined the gates. The world had arrived. Maya stepped forward. The movement was small, but the air around her changed. She wasn't just a target anymore, she was the verdict. Fallon was still in the back seat of the cruiser, lips pale, eyes wild. You think this is over? He barked through the cracked window. Maya turned, calm. No, she said. It's documented. She looked around the crowd, the cameras, the badges glinting under the morning light. You asked who I was, she said, her voice carrying clear across the park. You demanded proof of identity after you tore my shirt open in public. She paused just long enough for silence to take shape. Well, here it is. She lifted her wrist, tapping her watch once. A holographic seal flickered from the device. State Infrastructure Department. Executive Access Clearance. The same emblem engraved on every police vehicle behind her. I am Maya Brooks, she said steadily. CEO of Brooks Infrastructure and chair of the Governor's Economic Council. Her eyes found Fallon's through the glass. You ripped the shirt off the woman who funds your department. Is 1 tends to 10. The gasp that followed was physical. People stepped back as if struck. Phones rose higher, recording every word, every breath. Fallon's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The female security chief approached, speaking into her mic. Confirmation complete. Every statement she made matches state records. Ma'am, your command is active. Maya nodded once. Then log the officers for immediate suspension pending ethics review. Yes, ma'am. Reed, the younger officer, lowered his head, eyes glassy. Ma'am, I'm sorry. Maya didn't gloat, didn't smile. Don't apologize to me, she said softly. Apologize to the people who watched and thought this was normal. The governor stepped forward then, standing just behind her, his voice low but resolute. The state stands with my wife, and with every citizen treated like less for simply existing. Fallon turned his face toward the window, shame etched deep. The sound of applause began not loud at first, but steady, rising from the crowd that had once been silent. Maya looked around at them, strangers, witnesses, allies, and exhaled. "This isn't revenge," she said. "It's correction." A reporter shouted from the fence, "Mrs. Brooks, what will happen now?" She met his gaze. "Now," she said, "we rebuild integrity. The same way we rebuilt this park layer by layer, until it can breathe again." The applause grew. Her torn shirt fluttered against the governor's jacket, sunlight glinting off the state seal on her watch. And as the crowd watched, the narrative shifted forever. From the woman detained in the park, to the leader who made a system kneel without ever raising her voice. The sound of applause faded into a kind of reverent stillness. Maya stood at the center of it, hands folded, expression calm, her torn shirt still visible beneath the governor's jacket. No podium, no gavel, just presence. The lead security chief approached and whispered, "Ma'am, Internal Affairs is on standby." "Orders?" Maya's eyes didn't leave Fallon, still trapped in the patrol car, jaw locked tight with disbelief. "Proceed," she said. "All of them, on record." The chief nodded. Within seconds, officers' radios crackled to life again, this time carrying a single command from headquarters. "Effective immediately, all responding personnel are suspended pending ethics review. Surrender your weapons and IDs." End quote. The echo of metal hitting asphalt followed one by one, sidearms placed on the hood of the cruiser. Fallon's face went white. "This is madness," he shouted through the glass. "You can't strip authority in the field." Maya turned toward him, voice quiet but absolute. "Authority isn't something you strip, Sergeant. It's something you earn. You lost it the moment you mistook my skin for a threat. This posit percent." He pressed his forehead against the window, the fury collapsing into something smaller, fear, maybe shame. No one moved to help him. Reed removed his badge last, hands trembling. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, "I'll testify to everything. It was wrong." Maya nodded once. "Then you'll help fix it." He swallowed. "I will." The cameras kept rolling. Drones hovered in perfect stillness. The world was watching every breath. Governor Brooks stepped beside his wife again, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. "Do you want to address the press now?" he asked quietly. "Not yet," she said. "Justice first, optics later." Behind them, Eli, the young park worker, watched in stunned silence, as the same officers who had barked orders minutes ago were now standing still, heads bowed, waiting for instruction. He whispered, "They look like statues." Maya heard him. "No," she said softly. "They look like accountability." She motioned to the security chief. "Have their reports pulled within the hour. I want every complaint against this unit reopened, no filters, no edits." "Yes, ma'am." Fallon's voice cracked through the open window. "You think you can destroy me because of politics? You're making a scene." Maya turned fully, eyes cold and focused. "You made a scene the moment you turned your authority into humiliation." "I was." She took a step closer, her reflection merging with his in the glass. "I don't destroy people, Sergeant. I expose them." The crowd murmured, some recording, some wiping tears. All of them changed. The young officer, Sanders, stood beside Reed now, whispering. She didn't even raise her voice. Reed nodded slowly. "That's the part that'll haunt me." The governor's communications director approached, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, the feed has gone global. Every outlet is broadcasting live. You should know your phrase. You ripped the shirt off the woman who funds your department. It's trending." Maya blinked once, unimpressed. "Then make sure they also broadcast this part." She turned toward the cameras. "You all witnessed a system act without reason," she said, her tone composed but edged with quiet fire. "And now you're watching what happens when accountability answers back. This isn't revenge. It's reform starting now." She looked to the chief again. "File the suspensions immediately. Transfer command to internal review." He nodded and raised his comm. "Orders confirmed." Fallon's door opened. 2 state investigators guided him out. He resisted at first, then stopped, realizing there was nowhere left to stand. The governor's jacket fluttered against Maya's frame as she spoke one final line to him, barely above a whisper, but captured by every microphone. "You tried to strip my dignity in front of strangers. Now those strangers will watch you answer for it." He didn't respond. He couldn't. As he was led away, applause rose again, this time not for spectacle, but release. Eli clapped once, tears streaking his face. Around him, people joined in, not loud, not triumphant, but honest. Maya looked at them, at the torn threads on her sleeve, then at the horizon beyond the trees. "File it all," she said to her assistant through the earpiece. "And tell the board this isn't a case, it's a lesson." 1817. The crowd's rhythm slowed, fading into silence. For the first time that morning, Maya allowed herself to exhale. Justice hadn't shouted. It had simply stood its ground, and the entire park bowed to the sound of its stillness. The park was quiet again. The last patrol car rolled away, leaving behind only sunlight, footsteps, and the residue of something that felt like balance. Reporters stood at the edge of the lawn, waiting. Drones hovered still above the lake, but Maya didn't rush toward the cameras. She walked instead to the cracked stone bench where she had dropped her phone earlier. She sat down slowly, the torn fabric brushing against her skin, the governor's jacket still draped across her shoulders. For the first time that morning, she let herself feel the weight of what had happened, not anger, not pride, just gravity. Eli approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, they're asking if you'll make a statement." She smiled faintly. "I already have." He frowned, confused. She looked up, eyes steady. "It's everything they just saw." She stood, brushed the dust from her hands, and faced the cameras. The governor stayed a few steps behind her, not as a shield, but as support. She spoke without notes, without rehearsal, and every word carried the clarity of lived truth. "This morning, I was reminded how quickly dignity can be torn," she said. "Not just by hands, but by judgment. For too long, people like me have been told to stay quiet, to stay calm, to prove we belong. But calm doesn't mean powerless. Silence doesn't mean surrender." A breeze moved through the trees, lifting the edges of her hair. "Power," she continued, "isn't in shouting. It's in standing steady when everything around you shakes." Her gaze swept across the crowd, cops, reporters, citizens, strangers, all caught in the same stillness. What happened here today wasn't just about race. It was about assumption, about what people think authority looks like. She paused, then softened. "But I've learned something. Respect shouldn't depend on recognition. You shouldn't have to own the park to be treated like you belong in it." The cameras zoomed closer, catching every glint of sunlight in her eyes. "I didn't raise my voice," she said finally. "I raised the standard." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, applause broke again, this time pure, unforced, swelling like a tide of relief. Eli joined first, then the reporters, then the strangers who had seen everything from the start. Maya looked toward the lake, where her reflection trembled across the water, fractured, but whole. She exhaled once, deeply, as if letting go of years of quiet battles no one had filmed. Then she turned to leave, her husband beside her, the crowd parting not out of fear but respect. And as the camera pulled back for the final shot, her voice lingered in the air like a vow reborn. "Dignity doesn't ask for permission. It reminds the world it was never theirs to take."